Hi everybody, my name is Megan Murphy-Rouse and I'm here with Living Lēla, Wendy and Deborah, as one of their guest contributors to the online Soulful Conceptions Complete Mind Body Fertility Program. And I am a certified Ayurvedic practitioner and a functional medicine nutritionist. So the role that I play in the Soulful Conceptions program is to provide Ayurvedic and functional medicine nutrition guidance for fertility. And today we're here as part of one of the many segments that Wendy and Deborah are doing for Endometriosis, Awareness Month. And they have asked me to come in and give a little bit of a bird's eye view on what we can do to reduce inflammation with diet. And so the way that we practice nutrition and functional medicine is very individualized. So what creates inflammation for me is going to be different, likely, than what creates inflammation for you. However, there are these basic foundational components to any anti-inflammatory diet, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So if you are struggling with endometriosis, these are some very easy first steps that you can bring in to support your terrain, literally your physical terrain, and being more anti-inflammatory. We know that inflammation is a huge driver in endometriosis, okay, as it is in many, many chronic diseases. So there are simple things that we can do with food, using food as medicine, using food as information for our cells to reduce that inflammation. Okay, so when we talk about what changes we can make in our diet, we talk about what can we bring in, which sometimes is easier, and then what can we take out. So we want to bring in anti-inflammatory foods, and we want to take out pro-inflammatory foods. So bringing in anti-inflammatory foods would mean bringing in some omega-3 fatty acids, because fat actually interacts with our cells. It docks at something called a toll-like receptor, and that fat creates this cascade of reactions within the cell that has either a pro-inflammatory effect or an anti-inflammatory effect. And our omega-3 fatty acids as a whole are anti-inflammatory. So we can get those omega-3 fats from nuts and seeds, for example, hemp seed, flaxseed, chia seed, and walnut. And so those have something called alpha-linolenic acid in them. And alpha-linolenic acid is a precursor to EPA and DHA, the omega-3s that are preformed in cold water fatty fish. So the cold water fatty fish that is wild caught is going to have lots of the EPA and DHA, lots of that omega-3 fat, whereas some of the nuts and seeds are going to have less to begin with, and then the conversion of that alpha-linolenic acid all the way into eicosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, the EPA and DHA, it's like a 7-step process, and the conversion is pretty poor. So it's a good idea if you're seeking to promote the anti-inflammatory ambiance, if you will, in your body, that you include some of these cold water fatty fish. So think of SMASH, SMASH, sardines, mackerels, anchovies, salmon, and herring. Those are the fish that you can pick up either in a BPA-free can or wild caught at your local store. And these will be high in omega-3 fats, but low in heavy metals. And that's what we want, because we know the state of our ocean. We can't rely on that with all fish. For example, tuna is very high in omega-3 fats, but it also is high in mercury. So that's what we can bring in. And how much, you might ask? Well, if you can have 2 servings of fish a week, that's phenomenal, 2 to 3 of any of those fish that I mentioned. And then if you can aim for every single day, because we need more quantity when the amount of omega-3 precursor isn't as, when the conversion's low and when the alpha-linolenic content is just less. Anyway, point being is that you can take 2 tablespoons a day of the flax, of the chia, of the hemp, and then like a loose handful, like half a handful of walnuts. and you'll get that kind of consistent drip of alpha-linolenic acid. Okay, so to give your cells that anti-inflammatory cascade stimulus. And then what do we take out? And this is the part that's sometimes harder to hear, but I'll start with one that might be a little bit easier. We can take out conventionally raised meat. So when meat eats a lot of grains that are high in omega-6 fatty acids, that accumulates in those fatty acids accumulate in the fat that is in that meat. And omega-6 fat, while we need some of it, in our Western world, it tends to be that we're 20-1 omega-6 to omega-3, and we need to be more about like 4-1 omega-6 to 3, so we need way less omega-6. And omega-6 tends to bring us, not always, but tends to bring us along a pro-inflammatory pathway in our cells. And again, omega-6 is the fat that is in a lot of industrial seed oils and those things that conventionally raised meat products will be consuming. So we eat those meat products and we get that pro-inflammatory load in us. So choose grass-fed and pasture-raised, okay? Grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised meat products if you're going to eat meat. And then I would also suggest to eliminate dairy because endometriosis is an estrogen dominant. It needs estrogen in order to for the pathology to continue. So if we want to arrest that pathology, then we need to control estrogen. We need to help it detoxify. We need to stop it from proliferating so much. And then when we have dairy, we just add more hormone on top of an already high hormone environment. So when dairy is fermented, there's a little bit less of that estrogen there, but still you're getting it in. So if you're dealing with endometriosis, I would suggest going off dairy. And then I also recommend taking out refined sugar and refined flour because these are two components that will feed inflammation wherever it is in the body. And, there's one more. I also want to suggest to take out alcohol. And I know that's a hard one. A lot of times people don't want me to touch their coffee or their alcohol. But if you're one of those ones who has endometriosis and who is drinking alcohol every evening or drinking it at all, really, we have to understand that it upregulates an enzyme called aromatase. And aromatase takes the testosterone that's in your body, and ladies, you have testosterone in your body too, and converts it into more estrogen. So if we can remove dairy to remove some of that excess load of estrogen, remove alcohol to reduce the transformation of testosterone into estrogen, if we can reduce refined flour and sugar, if we can choose meat products that are grass-fed and pasture-raised, then all around we reduce the load of excess hormone and we reduce the load of pro-inflammatory fat. And our conventional meat products, I didn't even mention this, they have hormone and antibiotic that are pumped into them. So not only are you eating pro-inflammatory fat, you're eating also hormones. And again, we want to help support an environment of hormonal balance, and that is not the case with endometriosis. So I'm going to leave you with one more to bring in because it feels like I've given you a lot of options for taking out, and I'd like to give you one more thing to bring in, and that is your cruciferous vegetables, your astragalus, your bok choy, your kale, your cauliflower, your broccoli, your kohlrabi. Did I say that already? Bok choy. Anyway, the brassica family of vegetables. When you chew on them, okay, they have a sulfur compound called glucosinolate, and that glucosinolate is called glucobrassicin. And when you chew on that, it releases something called indole-3 carbonyl. And then when that gets to your stomach and interacts with your stomach acid, it produces something called diindolylmethane. And diindolylmethane takes your estrogen and brings it, we keep talking about these pathways, it transforms it so that it can be into a form of estrogen that's less proliferative. Okay, so there are endometriomas in endometriosis, right? That's proliferation of tissue. We want anti-proliferation of tissue, and estrogen is part of what drives the proliferation of tissue. And aromatase, that enzyme, is hyperactive in these endometriomas, okay? So it drives that proliferation of tissue. And when we eat cruciferous vegetables, we can take, thanks Deborah, we can take estrogen that might be more proliferative and change it into a form that can be more easily expelled by the body and that actually protects our DNA. And that's why you might hear, eat your broccoli if you want to have an anti-cancer diet. Well, the same goes with endometriosis. It helps us balance our estrogen metabolism as a whole, and it helps protect our cellular DNA, because we do know that there is increased risk for endometriosis cancer in endometrial cancer in endometriosis. So having at least 5 servings of cruciferous vegetables a day will really help support, it will support detoxification and help protect you in the long run. Yeah. So that was a lot of information. I'm just going to recap. Okay. So bringing in hemp, chia, flax, and walnuts with high alpha-linolenic acid, bringing in cold water fatty fish, your smash fish that are also low in mercury and high in omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA, and bringing in 5 servings of cruciferous vegetables a day if you can digest them, and then to take out alcohol, because we know that upregulates aromatase, and aromatase helps feed estrogen, and estrogen helps feed those endometriomas. We are going to take out dairy because we already have a high hormone environment of excess estrogen. We don't want to put more on top of it. And then we're going to take out conventionally raised meat products because, again, more hormones and highly inflammatory fat. And then refined sugar and refined flour, which are you just got to. That's the fundamental piece there. And then, to take it deeper, you look at what foods might be causing inflammation uniquely for you. But this is a great springboard. This will take you far. And by shifting our omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid balance, you do a lot to protect your body as a whole and hopefully to also reduce your pain. Okay, the pain that is so intense with endometriosis. So hopefully that was not too overwhelming. And I am now going to invite Deborah and Wendy to come on and say hello also. So let's see if I can do that here. Adding Deborah with Living Lēla.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much for all of that information. That was amazing. I always learn something new when I talk to you. So wonderful.
Cool.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yay.
And yeah, we are just so excited to have you being a part of, our bigger program, and just you're also one of our favorite people in the whole wide world. And for those of you who might be watching, if you want to learn more about Megan and all the wonderful work she does, you can go directly to her website, which is rootvitality.com. As well as you'll find Megan and her work on our website, soulfulconceptions.com, which is where you can also opt in for our free fertility resource library. And in that library, there's an introduction to Megan and her work. There's an introduction to Deborah and her expertise in psychology, to the yoga portion of our program, and much more. So, we are just so excited.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much, Megan. We'll have you back again soon, I'm sure.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, and we're just so happy to share this, to support all of you going through endometriosis. And just like Megan said, we all really need to be on an anti-inflammatory diet because chronic illness is so prevalent and stress is so prevalent, which creates inflammation too. So amazing information. Yeah. Like she said, sometimes hard to hear because it means changing our lifestyles. Yeah. But for the long run, if we want to be healthy and optimize our fertility, in the case of the people who are usually watching us, there's just some of the things to do. So. And sometimes, I think, Megan, you were talking about this earlier, and I forget what you if you called it DOT. Was it DOT?
Oh, Jot.
Jot. Okay, so explain that because I loved that concept.
Yeah. So Jot is just one thing. So if all of what I talked about was a little bit overwhelming, pick just one thing. And we have to every inch leads to a mile, and that will make that jot. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next one. And Megan, we love you. And